2 years ago, my wife and kid left home while some workers were breaking a few walls in our flat. So I was left alone, living in the cellar, with nothing to do all day, until gradually my past got as much relevance to my life as my present days. So I had this idea of a guy standing on a collapsing boat, desperately wanting to get out. So I decided to start building a diorama showing just that. I hesitated between two French cruises whose plans were available online for free. Those were the part1 and the Galilée. Finally setting for using the first one, mostly because the wooden cabin was smaller, while keeping the name of the second one for the only reason that it sounded better. There's nothing really very interesting to say about the part1 herself. She was built in 1898 and she was scrapped less than 15 years afterwards. Her complement was 384 crewmen. She bore no history worth to mention, except that she fired on some insurgents in the Panama Canal at one point. She was the perfect unsound boat, but I couldn't help finding her very beautiful with that huge rainbow of hers. The problem when you want to model an 1898 French cruiser is that you can't just type edward.cz on internet and expect to come up with something worth for your diorama. Still, considering all the intricate details and cut-out metal parts you may find in such a boat, you've got to remember those boats looked a bit like the Eiffel Tower. You have no other choice than to do your own homemade photo edge threads. To do those, you just need 4 tools: a vector graphics software to draw the plans, a desk printer to print the schemes on a transparent paper, an insulating table which is basically a box with some special UV lights, and finally an etching tank. Mine is done out of an old morning chocolate plastic box, in which I insert an aquarium heater and a bubble maker. Now you need to get some special brass, which is coated with photoresist material, and also some acid that is sold in electronic shops to make some printed circuits, as well as some liquid to develop the metal once it is insulated. Really, the web is packed with descriptions on how to do the stuff, so I won't go on and on about it. Just notice that I don't attach the pieces of the threads, but let them loose in the acid bath, which avoids you to trimming all small pieces. You can retrieve them afterwards by filtering the acid. After a few days, I had enough bits done to make the Hotchkiss gun, as well as all the supports for the bridges of the boat, as well as the steering wheel, everything I needed really. Now remember, you have to remove the coat of photoresist material on the metal bits before being able to solder them, so clean them with acetone. Here's a bit of soldering. I actually only use Car's brown flux and solder. Not because I used a lot of different browns and think Car's is the best, no. I just happened to read a very good article on soldering, and the guy recommended using Car's. So first applying the green flux with a brush, and then let's solder that on the side of the bridge. Here's some more difficult soldering job done on the ladder. But it went very smoothly using the third hand. Did you hear that sound? The sound of the burning flux. It means that the soldering job should be actually successful. Trying to work on that Hotchkiss 37mm gun. First, let's cut a small bit of brass tubing of the right length. Then, glue a small metal or plastic circle at one of the tubing's ends. Then cover the tube with some magic sculpt mastic, giving it roughly the shape of the gun's tube, pressing it around your fingers. Use a ruler in order to flatten it against a hard surface so that the shape could be really straight. Let's now try to build all the supports for the gun, using some small half-dried magic sculpt lumps that I rolled around the modeling knife for the shape. Now here's another technique I use to make those round supports that you can find on each side. I flatten some thin magic sculpt lump, and when they start to dry, I cut them and roll them in some ring-like shape. Well, now I used roughly the same techniques to prepare the base of the gun. That's just basically more tubbing cutting, plastic trimming, and magic sculpt coating. Well, I was wise enough to prepare a few metallic rounds on my photo etch fret. Those are simply used to define the diameter of each side of the base. Once welded together, the three pieces will be coated with magic sculpt and rolled on a flat surface, just like I did for the gun's tube. Of course, you may understand the reason why I actually welded the stuff instead of just gluing it. That's because no gluing would have withstood the pressure against. Here's a way more complicated exercise involving some metal tubing, whose shape was useful to flatten some mastic against a bit of plastic rod. I think the most difficult part of the exercise was to get some really perpendicular surfaces in order to work properly. Now really the biggest difficulty using photo etch is of course that it lacks of thickness. So here I use some flattened magic sculpt in order to make the gun handle a little more weighty. Once again, this use of half-dry magic sculpt is really basic on this gun modeling, because you can basically make the mastic get the shape you want. Here I pressed it against some kind of screwdriver. Of course, after having built all those different pieces, I just had to glue them together, just like it was a regular model.